98.1 Ablaze Radio presents another Catholic Chat with Ken Shivers. Ken sat down with Dr. Eric Warren, Provost of Holy Spirit College in Atlanta, about his mission to bring back a faithful Catholic approach to education, how to do it without racking up unsustainable debt, and much more. So enjoy the conversation right here on 98.1 Ablaze Radio.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Eric Warren, who is the Provost of Holy Spirit College right here in Atlanta. And spent some time with Dr. Warren talking about the college and the state of education, higher education specifically, in our area, and get into some of the details about, if you're interested, how you can get in touch with the college for students and parents. So welcome, Dr. Warren.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for having me.
We first want to start just by having you introduce yourself and tell us how you became provost of Holy Spirit College.
Well, I had been at Georgia Gwinnett College for several years as a professor, and it's a great place. I had a great experience there. So this place is called Holy Spirit College, and sometimes the Holy Spirit just pushes you in different directions. So this opportunity came up. A friend sent the ad to me, and one thing led to another. What I was really attracted to was the idea of sort of building a new program in the city of Atlanta that is a faithful Catholic approach to education.
Yes.
Right. We don't really have much like this. Ever since Southern Catholic College closed, we haven't had an institution that's sort of headquartered in Atlanta that is focused on producing or providing a faithful Catholic education to undergraduates and graduate students. And I just kind of like the idea of being in sort of a startup situation.
Sure.
I found.
I know that you are a voice for school choice and other policy, government education policy directives or efforts. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of your expertise in that field.
Sure. So some of my most recent research is on hybrid homeschools. Mm-hmm. So these are schools where students will typically go to a campus either 2 or 3 days a week. They'll show up and there will be desks and chairs and other students and a building and everything that looks like a typical school that you might think of. But the rest of the week they're homeschooled, mm-hmm. and that can take a variety of forms. The parents could kind of just freely work with them on their own, or at the school that I have worked with mostly, St. John Bosco Academy. The students will have more structured lessons that are provided by the teachers.
Mm-hmm. And the current state of education in our area, in our country, what's your opinion on why alternatives or even parent choice in education for their students is important?
Yeah, things are changing very rapidly, and sort of the quick answer is people just want more alternatives for themselves. Mm-hmm. As a society, we're sort of less accepting of one-size-fits-all answers to anything, and there's nothing that people care about more typically than their kids. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of sort of policies in various states catching up with people's desires to have different alternatives and technology sort of enabling more things, we're seeing lots of different forms of schooling come up. Mm-hmm. So hybrid homeschools are one. Homeschooling in general is becoming more popular because it's easier to get more materials and support online. As we get things like education savings accounts, which sort of provide funding for, it can be for school tuition, for supplies, for various things. And then online schools, we're just going to see all kinds of different models emerging. and things are going to be harder to characterize as one thing or another. And I think that's great. I think people are good at finding solutions that work for them and for their families, and that's becoming easier and more popular as we go.
Funding of efforts to send your child or your children to either a private school or a hybrid situation, even for homeschooling, there's expenses involved. What's the current state of funding, and I'll use the V word, vouchers and that type of thing in our area, in the state of Georgia?
Yeah, vouchers have started to take kind of a back seat to something called tuition tax credits, which we have one of those in Georgia, whereby you can donate money into an approved organization and receive a credit on your taxes, and then those organizations then hand out scholarships to students to go to various schools that they work with. We don't have this yet, but Florida has an interesting program. Their education savings account program provides funding for parents to do all kinds of things. So Florida's program is more wide open. It's not just providing tuition.
Really?
Right. So, but parents are able to take their amount of money and they can spend part of it on tuition. They can spend it on, if you have a special needs student, they can spend it on anything from materials to tutoring. I can think of at least one person who uses it for equine therapy for their student, because that just sort of helped the kid cope better. And
Sure.
So they have a kind of a wide open program where parents are taking this block of money that they're getting from the state and cobbling together whatever they find to be the best solution for their own kids.
Very good. Is there any effort in Georgia to continue to grow those types of programs legislatively here? Yeah,
Georgia's a conservative state in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is we like to kind of sit back and watch what happens in other places, right? So there's talk about ESAs. There once in a while there will be a bill that come up, but
an ESA
is an education savings account.
Okay.
I don't know that it's imminent here,
Sure.
but legislators are aware of it and are starting to talk about it a little bit.
So there are some discussions going
Sure.
on. Okay. And so Holy Spirit College is indeed the only or one of the few Catholic institutions of higher learning headquartered here in Atlanta.
Right. So we're the I believe the only one headquartered in the Archdiocese.
The interest that you had began to percolate at some point, and you realized, yep, this is where I want to be. Yeah,
so we're at kind of an interesting time in higher education in this country, right? If you pay any attention at all to the news around higher ed, you'll notice sort of three things, right? One is that it's getting harder and harder to have sort of good-natured disagreements over things on campus.
Yes.
Right? And typically that involves fighting over topics related to religion.
Yep.
Right? So campus in general is becoming a little bit more hostile to people of faith.
Is that a religious liberty issue focused on the campuses?
I think it's become a religious liberty issue because campuses are becoming very philosophically homogeneous. Mm-hmm. They're sort of conformist in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And so where things used to be sort of more freewheeling and you can agree to disagree with people you come across, it's become a little bit more of a tighter culture. There are lots of cases or things that flare up across the country. Sure. On different campuses where we're not really willing to kind of live and let live anymore. And for a person of faith, that can be hard. Mm-hmm. It's not just you're disagreeing over football or over even over something in politics. This is something that's
Sure.
intrinsic to who you are.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a little bit more unfriendly to religious belief and expression on campus in a lot of places.
So that's one thing.
So that's one.
Yeah.
So that's one that kind of drew me to, all right, what would it look like if I could really promote the faith on a college campus?
Sure.
Right. So that's one. The second one is that colleges are also becoming a lot more focused on just the economic purpose of going to school. So the only reason you go to school is to get a job, right? I think that's a little bit of an impoverished view of education.
Really is.
Right. That you do go to college to get a job, right? But if that shouldn't be the only reason that you go. We're sort of planning for the jobs that people are going to have in 5 or 10 years on the one hand, but on the other hand, we also talk about how the jobs that we're planning for are going to disappear because of artificial intelligence or robotics or whatever. So whatever job you have, I think it's important to have a grounding in your faith, in literature and history.
So it's a classical education
Yeah.
approach rather than job-oriented.
Right. So there's nothing wrong with planning for having a job, but you want to prepare to live your life too.
Sure.
So if you can have an education that gets you a little bit deeper into your faith, into the great works of the past, that'll set you up for whatever you're going to do. Ostensibly, you're going to be a voter at some point in your life, right? You're going to raise a family, or you're just going to interact in your society, in your community. And so you really want people who can think deeply about things. Honestly, I think employers are going to be more interested in people who are educated that way too, because if the nature of your job changes every 3 or 4 years, what you don't want is to be an expert in one particular machine or one particular program, but you want to be a person who can think and adapt and who has kind of an intellectual and moral grounding that you can operate from.
Right.
When we come back, we'll find out what inspired Dr. Warren to want to change the way we do higher education. And wait until you hear where our student loan debt number is today. It'll blow you away as our Catholic Chat with Dr. Eric Warren continues on 98.1 Ablaze Radio.